Did I get the sheet? So I told you yesterday the things I didn't get from people, right?
What was the number?
Are you talking about your brand or the? These are the people that got zeros because I didn't get it yesterday for social studies. I'll tell you. This was yesterday, so we're in the new trimester. So you didn't have it. I didn't get page 575 from Lily, so she got a 0 on it. And Christian, I didn't get page 575, and you and I didn't get page 575. So those are the and.
Allison, where did you put it? I think you threw it away.
So those are the ones that got zeros. Otherwise, everybody got everything. Lily.
What page were you looking for me?
575.
She already gave that back to me.
What was it? A 2? What was the score?
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
For 575, that shouldn't have been a 10-point one.
She put,
Not for 575.
what's another folder?
575 was worth 8 points.
That's the papers in your book.
I don't know if she graded it, that's because she just handed it back to me.
Oh, that was for this part. That's a 9 out of 10 for
Here,
this
I'll
part.
bring the quarter to tomorrow.
I'll check this out.
Okay, Mr. Hill, do you have out of meal on Good Friday?
I don't think so.
No, okay, then can I go look for my thingy, my paper? And I'll do it for a service. Can I do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ryder?
Can I do my notebook for a service?
Yes. So, we filled out what part of this?
The American and the Native American.
Native Americans, okay? So the parts we haven't are the other parts that you read about. The ranchers, you saw a movie on cowboys and Indians, right? Did that movie work?
We listened to it.
Then we did watch it.
It didn't work?
Yeah, but then she figured out how to do it, but she never got around to actually doing it.
We did.
We should watch it. We didn't watch it.
We watched,
Like the first
That'd be pretty boring just to listen to it.
We
Yeah,
watched
so
like the
some of
first
us
25
like,
minutes.
So it's pretty boring, huh?
yeah.
So you're saying it was like typical Mr. L class, is that what it?
Like,
No.
like
Oh.
more boring.
What did you say?
Nothing.
Wow, Grega. Can I go grab my paper for service?
Yeah, who's all the service now? I'm getting so many.
Allison, Ryder, Lucy. Emily should do the
Running out
same
of
one too.
space.
would you mind adding Gianna to that so that she can look for hers?
Yeah, Emily Snyder.
Allison.
Emily disrespected Mr. Hill. Sorry, was it?
Who just left?
Lucy.
For me, you.
Yeah, Gianna's got it.
Wait, Gianna.
That's a lot of names.
Can you please put this in
Is
my...
that the most services you've ever had?
Thank you so much, Gianna. Or you can just put it in my locker.
No, those aren't sex, they're services. Yeah.
So those at home, if you have the graphic organizer handy, that's what we're gonna go through. The notes we haven't covered. And today we want to talk about the farmers.
Yeah.
But before I forget, Thursday, guess what's happening? I guess since you haven't looked on Google Classroom, you probably don't know.
A test.
We have a quiz.
No.
President's quiz number
3.
3. That means what?
First 15.
First 15.
That's a lot.
First,
Thomas
George Washington. John Adams. James Madison. James Monroe. John Quincy Adams. Andrew Jackson. Martin Van Buren. William Henry Harrison. John Tyler. Zachary Taylor.
I knew that.
Millard
I
Fillmore.
knew that too.
Franklin Pierce. James Buchanan.
He found it.
And then it was that one. Everyone knows
Ed
Abraham.
Garfield.
Okay, Abraham Lincoln's 16, so he's on the next one.
Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, so write that down in your planner right now.
Yay.
You can write this down too. Review worksheet.
I can't
Okay.
I like Abraham Lincoln is the best president.
He's the only
I'm
president
going
I can
to-
Yes, he
remember.
is. He is.
Ulysses
S. Grant.
The best. Oh,
Last
Ulysses
one,
S. Grant's
review
better. No, the best president is Ronald Reagan.
Worksheet.
Biden.
I can't.
No, Ulysses S. Grant. No.
No, Ulysses S. Grant is the best one of mine. It's Ronald
That's what we're
Reagan.
getting today. That's homework for Thursday, in addition to knowing the first 15 presidents.
Oh, I can't figure that out. These are mine. Rest
What?
review work.
Can you add my name to the service list? I can go search for mine.
I'd say you just take it and write your notes on a sheet of paper.
Oh, good point.
These people are taking too long.
Email service.
Good job.
You can add it if you want, or just use your loose
That is
one.
totally.
I mean, you need a service.
Everyone on this.
I don't need no.
I know.
Bad English.
So, first of all, let's look. No, I don't want to power off. That's your next year's stuff.
Oh. The well-written bill, title. This is the part of the bill that will be read to committee and in the legislative body that when the bill is, okay.
Dakota Territory, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago, Iowa,
Ooh,
Illinois,
Minnesota.
St. Louis,
Where's
Sit down,
New Jersey?
Missouri,
Where is
Arkansas,
Ohio?
Louisiana,
Ohio.
Texas,
Who wants to be my smart board?
I will.
I do.
Please.
My name's never that thingy.
Then you have to sanitize your hands afterwards so I don't contaminate you.
You should put my name in there. You don't have to put my name out.
Who wants to be my smart board, Ryder? You want to be the smart board? Somebody not here? You win?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was
Have you already done it?
No.
No one's
Take
gonna
your
ask
notes with you so you can take them as we go too. Who can tell me what this picture is?
A map.
A map.
Of what?
A
railroad.
Raise your hand.
Railroad.
Ben. Well, there are some railroads on here, so it has that part. So that's on this. That doesn't show up because we should really add another column on here. So we have Native Americans, we have miners, we have ranchers. You could put ranchers / cowboys. We have farmers, and the part that isn't on here is who? This part of this chapter.
Natives.
No.
You just told me.
Railroad.
Railroads, okay? So that's the part we that you should have watched the videos last time though, right? Oh no, that was mining. And railroads, was it both?
I guess. That was mostly mining.
Okay. So we need to talk about railroads too. And that's in our notes. But then you have these green things. What are these?
Trails.
Trails for what?
Hiking.
Wagon mining.
Biking.
Wagon.
Cattle trails.
Oh.
Why did they have cattle trails?
To sell the cattle. To independent.
Why didn't you sell them here?
Because it's not as worth much. As much as selling it in other places that don't
Why?
have as much. They don't have as much cattle.
They'll be willing to pay more.
They'll be willing to pay more because of what economic principle we've already learned this year? The law of
Economics.
what's the economic principle we've learned this year? The law of supply
Yes. Supply.
And
and
Demand.
demand.
Boom.
I totally got it.
Remember, what's the law?
Abraham Lincoln.
You don't follow that.
What's the law of supply and demand?
Supply goes up.
So if I have a high supply, what's that cause to the demand?
It goes down.
So the demand is low. And what's that cause to the price?
goes down.
The price will go down. Okay, but if I have a low supply,
Demand goes up and the price
you have
goes
high
down.
demand, and the price goes up. That works in everything, right?
Mhm.
Now here, they have lots of cows, but not very many what?
Cattle. Wagons.
People
Farmland.
People to.
People,
Yeah, see?
to have steaks,
I was
Ooh.
there yesterday, and
that means, we have a high supply. The demand is what?
Low.
Low, so the price of cattle was what?
Low.
So you're buying cattle for, you could buy a whole cow here for about $5.
Yeah. Like ours, $5 is there.
I thought $5. I would get that.
Okay? Of course, we're talking about what year?
1869.
Okay, the middle of the 1800s, so that's a little bit different. Okay, but if I could get those cattle where?
Anywhere.
Up,
In the
up,
north,
up.
south,
To where the
and
people
everything.
are,
Oh, yeah.
then what happens?
You
The
can
demand
sell
what?
more.
It comes up, right?
Demand goes up because I got more people, and that my supply is going to go down because I have fewer cows. Demand's going to go up, and I can sell them for a lot more. So they were selling them for $30, $40 a head. So I say five. That's a profit of what per cow?
35.
So a minimum of $25 probably profit per cow. So if I had 1,000 cattle, what?
That's a lot.
1,000 times 25.
And it comes in.
25,000.
$25,000 I'm going to make in 1800s,
What
the
do
middle
you
of the
have?
1800s. Okay,
It's going to be ready.
that's why they did the long drive. That's why they did the long drive. So let's go over here to the ranchers part. Reason cattle ranching became profitable in the West. One was the increased demand for beef. People wanted it. They already have that for you. Open range ranching. What's that mean, open range ranching?
No fences.
No fences. In fact, fences are what tamed the West. One of the things that conquered the West were fences. In fact, Joseph Glidden's invention. You know what Joseph Glidden invented?
Fences.
He invented this thing we call barbed wire.
Joseph Blue Blue again? again? What's his name?
Clinton.
Joseph Glidden.
Clinton.
Wait, say that again.
Joseph Clinton.
Glinda.
Glidden.
Glinda.
Glidden.
Glidden. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Somebody's going to develop a mask that has a little microphone on it.
Would that be not nice?
So how did this change things?
You.
Well, I suppose barbed wire it was
What's the name?
spiky and if you were to jump into it, you'd probably start bleeding, so.
You know what? We think fences are used for what?
Stopping our car.
Protection.
Keeping things in.
Keep things
That's
out.
not why fences were
It's
invented.
also
Okay?
things.
Fences were invented to keep things out. Who wanted these barbed wire fences?
Cowboys.
Farmers.
Ranchers. Cowboys.
Farmers.
Yes.
Wanted these barbed wire fences. Why?
Because they didn't want
So no
bunnies
one
to
want
jump
cows.
across.
Because cows were coming across and trampling their crops. The ranchers didn't like that because they lost their what? That we just saw right here.
Cattle. Road.
Cattle stuffs.
Read it. What's it say?
Idaho.
Who has the sheep? They lost the open range. Could they do the long drive if there's fences all over the place? No. That marked the end of the long drive when you start seeing barbed wire fences being put up by farmers that were moving in. So when we had fighting in the early West, the fighting was between ranchers and farmers. They didn't get along. Who was there first?
Abraham Lincoln.
Ranchers.
The ranchers were there first. They're the one that say, we tamed this land, it should be ours. The biggest thing that the ranchers were range rights. Okay? Range rights means this. What's the most important thing on the range?
Free range. Grass.
Besides the actual range, where the deer and the antelope play.
Flowers.
What do you need?
The field.
Sun, water.
Water,
Yeah.
okay?
Ooh, that's
Range
nice.
wise, if you had control of the water, you had control of the range. So by having an open range, ranchers could put their cattle where? Anywhere, and they'd find water. But when farmers started putting fences up, and farmers were using the water to do what?
Water their crops.
To water their crops for irrigation and for their own personal needs, they began fencing the cattle off of the water. And that's where you started to have the range wars, they call them, or fighting. So let's go back to this sheet now. One of the reasons they're profitable is also because the breed of the cattle that the Texas had down here.
Longhorn.
The longhorn cattle. So that's what you could put under there. One of the reasons it became profitable was it because of longhorn cattle. What made longhorn cattle so profitable?
Their horns.
They were everywhere.
Well, the supply, yes, but
Cornucopias.
the biggest thing about it is they're tough.
What? Is that even
If
a
you
word?
tried to drive like the cattle we have now around Minnesota, if you tried to drive those cattle all the way here, chances are what? They would die.
Yeah.
They couldn't make it. They weren't made for long drives. But the longhorn was tough. Also, longhorn didn't require as much water. So the longhorn could survive this long drive. And that's why it became profitable. The important routes they have, the Goodnight Loving Trail, what's some other ones you can put down?
Yeah, let's take it like
I'm not
buffalo.
thinking about
Longhorn, well,
Is this
buffalo.
graphic organized during Google Classroom? I'm not sure they have it in paper.
It is on Google Classroom as a PDF. You have to print it and write it down.
Yep.
But the answers aren't on it. We're giving you the answers now.
Western Trail.
So there, they gave you one, which is Goodnight Loving Trail. That's this one. Came up here, goes up to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And stopped at these, Denver, became a big railroad stop for them. That's why Denver grew, became a ranching town. So what are a couple of the other ones listed there?
Just go, good, yeah, just good.
Western Trail.
The Western Trail, okay? See the Western Trail that came up here? Came to Ogallala, Nebraska. A lot of people think Nebraska's just corn. If you go to this part of Nebraska, this is cattle range country. It's called the Sand Hills. I went to college right up here in the Sand Hills. Very beautiful country. And it's not flat like you see over here when you drive through Nebraska. So you have the Western Trail, you have the Chisholm Trail, you have the Sedalia and Baxter Trail. So any of those trails you could add to some of their cattle drives. And again, we should know that they were there. Why? Why are they there? Why do we have these drives?
Cattle.
It's all about doing what?
Profit.
Profit.
It's all about making money. Here, I'm not dumb. If I got one cow here sells for $5. If I bring him up here, he sells for what?
40.
$40. I want to get him here. And then I don't have to pay the cowboys, and they don't cost very much. They make about $20 a month. If you work as a cowboy. Who got paid the most on the drive?
People selling. Like the people who own them.
Well, if you're a rich owner, you wouldn't go on this drive. Why?
Because you don't need the
And
money.
you have people that do it for you.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's not glamorous. So you get up at like 3 in the morning, to eat breakfast, and you're on a horse all day long. How many have ridden a horse?
Wait. No, I haven't.
How'd you feel the next day after riding it?
Awesome.
Amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You didn't?
Yeah.
You didn't
Oh,
feel like
actually,
this?
never mind. No, I did.
Then you didn't ride it very long.
That's why people walk.
Then you didn't ride the horse very long.
No.
Okay? If you rode a horse all day long,
At your birthday party in next third grade, after the time the time comes.
you're gonna have TB. Tired butt.
Oh, dang it.
Okay? It's not an easy job.
Just saying.
And we talked about, let's go to the next, let's go up, I'll show you the different parts of the, go up. Keep going. Stop. Come back, come back, come back up here. Scroll up.
Tuberculosis.
Okay? So this is the job of the people, and if you go on the line, you can get these, okay?
Okay.
So you're trying to get them up to these railroad markets. Here's the problem: stampedes, storms, crossing rivers, rustlers. What's a rustler?
I don't know.
Anybody know what a rustler is?
Type of train.
See, if I was living in Hay Springs, Nebraska, they'd be laughing at you guys. They'd say you're citified. You know what citified means?
Nope.
You're from the city and you don't know anything about real life.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
And the people here would say, the people in Hay Springs, Nebraska, you'd call them country bumpkins or hicks. Okay? They say you don't know anything about the city. Okay? A rustler is somebody that stole cattle. Again, if I could steal cattle, I don't have any, and I get them up to those railroads, what?
You could make money.
I'm gonna make lots of money. Okay? Now, so the highest paid guy is the trail boss. He's in charge of the whole herd. Sometimes it would be the owner if he wasn't real rich and couldn't hire his own person, and they'd take him up themselves. Okay? The next, second highest was the cook. Because the cook had to get all this food, feed this whole crew. He had to find a camping spot for them. So the cook would cook breakfast in the morning before the sun even came up. He'd clean stuff up and then he'd get in the wagon and start going. And go past the herd and go out in front and find another camping spot. Then the horse wrangler. He's in charge of the remuda, because some people think because of movies that you watch, like a cowboy only had one horse and that was it. He just stuck with his one horse. It was, okay? You couldn't ride one horse the whole way up on that trail. Horses aren't the same as oxen, as we found out when we did the Oregon Trail thing. You got to give them rest. So that's why you'd have to have a group of horses that came along. And so cowboys are riding some, and the other horses are not being ridden. So, and then you have the cowboy. So you're 18 hours a day in the saddle. So those that rode horses, how many hours did you ride?
18
Anybody ride more than an hour at one time?
Probably.
Okay. Can you think about riding 18 hours?
Yeah.
Okay, where'd they get their methods from? Okay, they got them here from Mexico, vaqueros. That's what your book talked about. Okay, and these were some of the things they learned. You needed a big hat. No, because big hats look cool. The reason they got big hats is why?
Sun.
Keep the sun off you and keep the rain off you. It's like an umbrella. Because they're waterproof, okay? And these are the different positions when you were riding. The best place is to be at the front. Why is that the best place? You're not going through all the deposits that the cattle are leaving behind. Yeah, that's one. It smells a lot better. But the biggest thing is the dust. You're not eating everybody's dust. The worst is the drag, which is the back. That's why it's a drag. Call it drag because it's a drag. You don't want to be in the back because you got all the smell, but then you eat everybody's dust. So who would get these positions?
Cowboys.
Well, Cowboys get all these positions, but
Oh.
so which Cowboys would get this position?
The lowest person?
The lowest rank. How do you get ranked as a Cowboy?
I just have a question, but by how good you do?
It's the same way most people get ranked in anything. It's by the number of years that you
Yeah.
work for somebody. The more years you work, what? The better positions you're gonna get. So these are the rookies, guys just hired. They're gonna get that. You wanna watch a good movie about the cattle drive, you can watch John Wayne and the Cowboys. Anybody seen that movie?
No.
Anybody seen the John Wayne movie?
No.
Oh, you guys gotta watch the John Wayne movie.
I don't watch country.
Broaden your horizons. Broaden your horizons. Some of the cattle towns, we go back to the map. I gave you one of them in Nebraska's what? Ogallala, Abilene, prettiest town I've ever seen.
No.
Abilene. Where's Abilene in?
Omaha.
Kansas, Ellsworth, Kansas, okay? You got Denver, Colorado, you can put.
I like that
Okay.
Denver and
You can even have some of these, today, Fort Worth and San Antonio, and Coleman, Texas, are some of the ones where they started out. Dodge City, okay, the famous one. You can go there to Boot Hill. You guys know what Boot Hill is for? Nobody's heard of a Boot Hill?
No.
Boy, we are certified. Or do you know, Ben? Every one of these,
I've heard of it.
every one of these western towns had a Boot Hill. That's where people were buried. Okay? So moving down to reasons the cattle boom ended. We gave you one reason is up here, the barbed wire, severe weather, and basically what happened to prices, the demand became what? Too high a supply came up, so the demand, so what happens?
Demand went down.
Prices went down.
Oh, okay.
So low beef prices caused the cattle industry. And overgrazing caused it. Okay, so that's our notes for ranching. Let's move on to mining. Let's go up, scroll up to the mining part. Joey, what's your question?
Can I go to the back?
Yes. Or down, I'm sorry.
What was the grazing thing?
We already did the Native Americans, but that's on here too. Okay? So let's do railroads since we don't, you can add this on a column on the side or you can add it in your notebook. So the two major railroads, first of all, we passed the Pacific Railway Act of 1862. Is it on there?
No.
Hey? Everybody know what was happening in 1862?
No.
We should know. What was happening in 1862?
It's called the Transcontinental Railroad. I think.
Well, that's what this was. But what was else was happening in our country?
The gold rush?
Gold rush a little bit later.
The Civil War was going on, wasn't it?
Civil War was going on. It's the middle of the Civil War. We're still trying to expand our continent. And this is what did it. So Congress passed this act saying, you build from here and you build from there. For every mile of track you laid, we're going to pay you. That's what is it on here? Subsidy. This is not in your book, so you need to write it down. So a subsidy is a government grant of money. That means it's what? So when COVID hit, all your parents got a subsidy. They got a check for how much? You guys know?
1,000.
Like $1,400. every person in America that's an adult taxpayer got $1,400.
Oh, what about my brother?
That's why I think,
Okay? They were doing that in the hopes that what? Why would they do this? Why would they give railroads money?
is they would probably confuse otherwise.
Yeah, they wouldn't build the railroad. They wanted this railroad to connect our country together, east and west. So you had the two, the Central Pacific that started in Sacramento, and you had the Union Pacific that started in Omaha, Nebraska. This is a big joke in Nebraska. I saw UP on the side of a railroad car. You know what you see up here? You see NP, because in Minnesota, what's it called? You know what the railroad in Minnesota is called?
North Pacific?
Northern Pacific. Or Burlington Northern. But in Nebraska, all the railroads are UP, Union Pacific. So you're going to see UP on the side of a railroad car all over the place. People that helped build this, as you saw the movie on it, right?
Yeah, we saw that, yeah.
Okay? And there was another one online. I put some of the other videos if you wanted to see them. On the Chinese helped build that. And the Irish were the big builders of the Union Pacific. Who laid the most track?
The Union.
Why did the Union Pacific lay the most track?
Because then you have to go through a mountain.
Because their terrain was flatter,
Yeah.
which was good for them, although you got more subsidies for more difficult line, but the more miles of track you laid, the more money you made.
Yeah.
Not only did they get money, if it wasn't in the grant of money, they got land. So here's the railroad. Here's the railroad. How much land did they get on this side? How much land did they get on that side? You know?
10 acres.
20 miles.
No,
This way, 20 miles that way. How much land does the railroad need?
not much.
You guys been over here railroad tracks?
Not much.
How wide is it?
Like, about
Maybe
5
a few
feet.
If, you know, they have to have some space on each side to be able to work on it maybe. Well, let's just say even the width of our classroom probably is plenty enough land for the railroad, isn't it? That means they got all this other land here. What are they gonna do with it? Again, what's it all about for people?
Money.
Money and land.
So how are they gonna make money?
Sell it.
Okay, we're gonna sell all this land. To the last group that we're gonna, on the sheet, right? Who's the last group?
Farmers?
Farmers. The two major lines are called trunk lines, so these could be trunk lines. And then where they connected to the other cities, those are called feeder lines. This would make or break a town. So if the railroad goes by, here's the town. If the railroad went by the town, what happened to this town?
They
So
get
if
mad.
the railroad came through this town, what would happen to this town?
It would get divided, I don't know. It would increase the population.
It would grow. If the railroad bypassed the town, said, we're not going by this town. We're not gonna send a feeder line off of this over there. We're not gonna do that. What happened to this town?
Then
Stay
it
the
goes
same.
down.
Okay? It would die out. What are towns those called what?
Ghost town.
Ghost towns. Some of them had to do with mining. Okay? That's kind of the same way in modern times with the interstate freeways. So when the interstate was put in, if the interstate went and they had an on-ramp into your town, what happened to that town? They got a McDonald's and they got all these gas stations because people what?
Live there.
They want to stop there. But if you didn't have an exit to your town, what happened to the town?
Nobody went there.
It dies, okay? So we got all of, let's go to so we got all the railroads covered, right? Let's go to the mining, skip up to the mining, past farmers. No, I guess we don't.
Yeah.
Go back. Maybe I don't have the mining. We'll just do the mining together. You saw the movies. Huh? So where's the locations? They got Idaho, Montana. Where's the one that was on the movie?
California? No, it was Nevada. Nevada.
Nevada. What's it called? So we're on the miners part here. Miners, you're gonna write down what? What was it called? What was it called, Nevada? It was called the Comstock Lode. Because load means what? You learned that term from the movie and from reading. What's load mean?
Big thing is gold.
A big vein of ore, whether it be gold. In the case of Comstock, it was not gold, it was what?
Silver.
Silver. Even though they didn't even know that they were getting, they said this blue gooey stuff.
Ew.
And they found out it was high grade silver. Silver is the second most valuable metal besides gold. Another place you could put Pikes Peak, Colorado. Anybody been to Pikes Peak? We took a vacation there when I was a little kindergartner. Guess what's at the top of Pikes Peak? Santa Claus. Santa Claus. I don't know if he's still there, but when I was a kindergarten, so that's only been 30, 40, 50,
He's probably still there.
only 53 years ago.
He's probably still there.
One
We
time
can
I saw Santa on the highway.
Look up Pikes Peak and see if Santa's still
On
there.
Christmas Eve, he was
Santa's workshop. And to get up there, you had to go around this
I know.
mountain road where you look off and it just drops off. And there weren't any fences along the side of it.
I didn't want to. Yeah.
So we got all the locations. Everybody got some?
What was the last name?
Pikes Peak
Like,
in Colorado. Later on, we can see the Black Hills too. You can put the Black Hills down.
Black Hill. I'll put that down.
What's a characteristic of a mining town? Well, they say it had general store, saloon, and boarding houses. Guess who made money in mining, really?
Me.
You know who made the money?
Miners.
Not the miners.
The people who set miners.
The people that own the shops. So like a loaf of bread. I used to have some prices, but I don't have time to look them up. But a loaf of bread cost more during that time than a loaf of bread costs us today in a mining town. A hat would cost 3 times of what it would cost us today. Because of what? The law of supply and
Because of demand.
demand. You had no supply of these things, so people what? They wanted them, high demand, so they could charge anything. So the people that really got rich were the market owners, the general store owners. Because mining is hard work. You should have got that from the video. You should also, probably didn't get this last part. You need to know this for the test. It's called hydraulic mining.
When's the test?
Eh? Test is on, what is today? Tuesday? Test is Tuesday.
Yes, you are.
Wait, what do I write after that?
Hydraulic mining is where they mine with water pressure. How do you make water pressure?
Pumping it.
Well, they didn't have pumps invented back when mines were here. So the way you make pressure is you start with wide pipes and you gradually what? Make them smaller and smaller and smaller. And then this small pipe, you have tremendous pressure coming out. And what they would do is they would just spray along the sides of the hills. And then that sediment would run down into troughs, and they'd have things to break and to separate the ore from the rest of the dirt and stuff. So it was effective, but what did it do to the countryside?
Destroy it.
Okay? And then they showed you how mining underground became too popular. So, characteristic of mining towns, you have high prices. The other is that they were dangerous because there wasn't usually any law. So let's get to the last part, problems of farmers. What's another name for farmers?
Landowners.
In fact, we should know all the different names. So, what's another name for miners? Some other terms you should know for miners. They're called prospectors. And you should know this term, assay. So if I got some ore, I'm going to take it to the assayer's office and get my ore assayed. What's that mean? Assay is it's tested. You're testing it for how much ore is in there. So the higher the test, what?
The more expensive.
More money I'm going to get. Okay? More money I'm going to get. Now, so farmers. What's another name for farmers? Is it up there? Scroll up. Is it up there? Yep. Okay. Why were they called sodbusters?
They had to break through the sod.
They had to break through the sod. Congress passed, again, the same time they passed the Pacific Railway Act, they passed the Homestead Act. We learned this last year in Minnesota history. A lot of people came to Minnesota because of this. But basically, I got 160 acres of land for free. All I had to do was what? All I have to do is live on it for 5 years. If I live on it for 5 years, it's free. What's the term for that? When you get something free from the government? A subsidy. Okay? Greta and Allison, do we need to change positions? This is not working real good. Did you get all these terms we've already said? What's a farmer called?
That's the SOLDBUSTERS.
SOL?
I meant D.
Oh. So 160 acres for free. That brought many, plus the railroads had what? They had lots of land they wanted to get rid of. So you could get more than 150 acres, 60 acres. But if you're a farmer, these are some of the problems you're going to have to deal with. One, isolation. What's that mean?
Not near a town.
There's nobody around you. The next farmer might be 15 miles. We think, well, 15 miles isn't very far. 15 miles by wagon is what?
Far.
It's all day if you want to go visit your neighbor. Or if you want to go into town. It's an all-day thing. You're isolated there. Okay, living conditions. When the first people came out on these plains areas, they lived in houses that were made of sod. Why? How many would like to live in a sod house?
I don't know what that is.
Why not?
Because dirt and grass.
Dirt and grass and mice and other stuff live in it. Insects, they're living in it. That's your wall. Well, why did they use that then?
That's all they had.
Okay, that's what was available. There weren't trees on the Great Plains. There's lots of sod. Plus, it's very energy efficient. It stays cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. But you're not going to want to live there very long. So as they developed and made a profit, made some crops, they would order east for what? For some wood on the railroad, and they'd bring the wood out so they could build a what? A wooden house. The environment was a problem. Climate's harsh. Climate. Can you imagine coming out here in Minnesota on the plains?
I can imagine.
How many have read the Little House on the Prairie books?
I get if I
Okay.
had been to the place.
They're talking about what life was like for these sodbusters. Okay? Insects were a problem. Storms were a problem. Grasshoppers would come in and wipe out the crops.
Oh, yeah.
Taxes were a problem. You're taxed according to your assets. You know what your assets are? Probably 1T, I think.
Here it is.
So when people tax you, you're taxed according to your assets.
Assets are, things that you really need.
Well, the things that you have that are of value. So give me an asset.
Money.
A ring.
Okay, jewelry could be an asset.
Expensive things or something.
Sure.
Expensive games. But let's talk about your parents, not yours. What's your parents' biggest asset?
Money.
Spouse.
Their house. Okay? Your house is an asset.
Oh, that's
Any
right.
land you own is an asset. Okay? Your income, your bank account is an asset. Now, if I'm really wealthy, what can I do with some of those assets? I can hide them in different places, in different accounts, and get tax breaks. Farmers can't hide their assets because farmers' major assets are what? The land they have. You can't hide land. Okay? Their livestock they have. So it's all out in the open. So they're getting taxed high, and they complain about that. They complain about the middleman. Who's the middleman?
Tax collector. No, never mind.
How does a farmer make their money?
By sell. Oh, is the middleman the people? The farmer sells it. Like,
So the
gives
farmer
it
has
to
these
them.
crops to sell, but they can't get their crops to the market. So they hire a middleman to get their crops to the market. So they got to pay the middleman. So instead of getting the full price of what they would get for the crops, they get a lower price because they're having to pay this middle guy. Okay? They complain about railroads. Because railroads, they offer better rates for other people. Railroads offer, just like companies do, you get a better rate for a company if you do what?
More.
If you do more business with them, you get a better rate. Now, if I'm just a family farmer, do I do lots of business with the railroad?
No.
No, I just got the crops that I grew on my 160 acres that I'm going to sell the railroad. But a big cattle company, they're doing lots of big business. So what that railroad's going to do is offer a better rate to that big business, and the farmer's going to have to pay a higher rate. And who complains? Farmers complain. That's not fair. Banks. They complained about banks. Because banks, what are banks?
Places that you can give your money to.
Banks are a business. Except the product they use to make money is what? Money.
Storing.
Banks use money to make money.
Yeah.
How do they make money?
By storing them.
By making loans where you have to pay interest. A lot of people are buying houses now because the interest rate in our country is what? Really low. But if they raise the interest rates, okay, and farmers, their interest rates are always high interest rates compared to everybody else. Why would a farmer's interest rates on their loans be so much higher than everybody else's?
Because they're farm.
Banks give loans based on risk. If you have a higher risk, their interest rate's going to be what?
High.
Higher. Why is farmers considered to be a risky business?
Someone could just stop by and rob you, could get trampled, something.
Okay? You could do everything right as a farmer. You could work from sunup to sundown every single day. And in one day, what could happen?
It all
Everything
depends.
could go wrong.
Could be destroyed. A hailstorm comes in and wipes out your crop. Locusts come in, eat all your crop. Even if you did everything right. That's why it's considered a risky business, and that's why they had. And then they complained about prices. Prices were always what?
Well,
But they didn't understand the law of what?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. So that, as a farmer, I'm only thinking about doing what?
Selling your crop.
I want farmers get the most enjoyment. They're not really about money hungry. Most farmers aren't. Okay? They get the joy from what?
Farming.
From seeing those crops grow. And the more crops that grow, that's what?
More joy.
That's more joy. But they don't realize that the more crops they're growing is causing what?
More money.
More supply. Higher supply means what?
Less money.
Lower demand, less money. So actually they hurt themselves by growing too much. If you're a farmer. So they complain about all these problems. So under here where it says farmers, first of all, why did they move west? We could put what? What act? What act? Go back here. Okay, so put that. So that's why they moved west, the Homestead Act. They also, you can put the Moral Act, because the Moral Act gave you more land if you planted some trees. That's why if you drive into the farms around here, what do you see around every farm? You'll see a line of trees. Because farmers planted these trees as windbreaks. That helps conserve your soil, and then they're getting paid, they're getting more land for doing that. Next up, what did they, challenges they face? So you can put any of these things, okay? You can put any of those things. And what helped them? Two things we didn't talk about were new farming equipment. There are three major things. One is called thresher. A harvester. What is it? Where is it? Don't leave yet because we got our review. Really, I tried to go over the stuff that's on this worksheet.
Yay.
Now, Emily, you want to press off on there?
I do.
Hey, press off.
Yeah, no, I want to say hi. I want to say hi. And you can turn it off. There you go.